The January wind in Minnesota doesn't just blow, it bites. It's a persistent, howling thing that rattles the window panes of this old farmhouse and reminds you that nature always has the final say. Out here, the world turns a monochromatic gray by 4 in the afternoon, and the only defense against the creeping chill is a roaring fire and a heart that's seen enough winters to know they eventually end. I was sitting in my favorite wingback chair by the fireplace, watching the snow swirl across the driveway like ghosts dancing in the porch light. My joints were aching, a familiar winter gift, but my home was full. My daughter, Sarah, and her husband, Mike, were in the kitchen, the clatter of silverware and the smell of cinnamon rolls filling the air. My teenage grandson, Leo, was sprawled on the rug, his face illuminated by the blue glow of his phone. "Grandma," Leo said, not looking up, "why do you always wear those thick wool socks, even inside? It's like 75 degrees in here." I chuckled, the sound raspy from years of morning coffee and cold winters. "Because Leo, once your feet get cold down to the bone, it takes about 40 years to warm them back up. I'm still working on the last 5. He rolled his eyes, but I saw the small smile. It's these moments, the quiet domestic hum of a house filled with people, that I live for now. But as I looked at my family, a familiar shadow flickered in the back of my mind. They see me as Gram, the woman who makes the best apple butter in the county and forgets where she put her reading glasses. They don't see the woman who once knew how to strip a rifle in the dark or lead a convoy through a blizzard. This past season had been heavy. Thanksgiving was a whirlwind of turkey and Sarah's slightly burnt stuffing. Christmas had been even louder, with my son David and his wife flying in from California. We did the traditions, the tree cutting, the midnight service, the hanging of the stockings. We laughed, we ate, and we played the roles assigned to us. But for me, the holidays are always a season of loneliness disguised as celebration. Amidst the laughter, I often find myself drifting back to the late 1970s. I remember raising Sarah and David in a tiny apartment while their father was finding himself somewhere in Oregon. I remember working 3 jobs, the silent betrayal of a husband who walked away when things got hard, and the way I had to harden my heart to keep a roof over our heads. I never told them about the years after the divorce. I never told them about the enlistment. In our town, a woman joining the army back then wasn't something you bragged about at the PTA. You just did it because the benefits meant your kids could go to the dentist. I told them I had taken a government consulting job that required travel. It was a half-truth that saved me from their judgment, but it built a wall of silence that has stood for decades. The following Tuesday, the temperature dropped to 15 below. A pipe burst in the upstairs crawl space, and water started dripping through the ceiling. Mike and David were up there with flashlights, moving old boxes of Christmas decorations and childhood trophies to save them from the damp. "Hey, what's this?" I heard David call out from the attic. My heart skipped. I knew exactly what he had found. Tucked behind the old sewing machine was a heavy, olive-drab cedar chest. I had told myself for years I'd move it, but my knees wouldn't allow the climb, and my soul wouldn't allow the confrontation. "Mom, this thing is locked tight," Mike said, lugging the chest into the hallway, "and it weighs a ton. Is this more of Dad's old stuff?" I walked up the stairs, my cane clicking rhythmically on the wood. The boys were standing over the chest, curious and impatient. Sarah had joined them, her arms crossed, looking at the dusty trunk as if it were a time capsule. "It's mine," I said quietly. "Yours?" Sarah laughed. "Mom, you hate heavy luggage. What's in here? Vintage quilts?" I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and pulled out a small, tarnished brass key I'd kept on my keychain for over 30 years. My hands shook slightly. I knelt, ignoring the protest of my joints, and fit the key into the lock. Click. The lid creaked open. The scent of mothballs, cedar, and gun oil drifted out, cutting through the flowery scent of the hallway air freshener. On top lay a neatly folded army green service uniform. Beside it, a row of medals pinned to a ribbon bar, including a bronze star. Underneath that, a series of black and white photographs of a young woman with a sharp no-nonsense haircut, standing in the mud of a motor pool in West Germany, holding a heavy wrench like a scepter. The silence in the hallway was so thick you could hear the snow hitting the roof. "Mom?" Sarah whispered, picking up a photograph. "This is you in Fort Jackson, 1982? I thought you were working for that shipping company in Chicago back then." "I was a mechanic, Sarah," I said, my voice gaining a strength and a clarity I hadn't used in years. And later, I worked in logistics. I didn't join because I wanted to be a hero. I joined because your father left us with $4,000 in debt and a car that wouldn't start. I spent my vacations at drill. When I told you I was going to corporate retreats in the summers, I was in the field sleeping in a tent so you could have those brand-name sneakers for school. David picked up the bronze star, his face pale. You never said a word, even when we called you too rigid. Remember when I was 16 and I called you a drill sergeant because you made me finish my chores? I didn't know you actually were one. I had to be disciplined, I said, looking him in the eye with a gaze that had once made privates tremble. I was a sergeant. I had 40 soldiers under me and 2 children at home who needed to know that the world had order. I didn't need your thanks back then. I needed you to be safe, fed, and educated. The self-respect I felt in that moment was intoxicating. For years, I had let them see me as a fragile porcelain doll, but as they looked at the uniform, I saw their perception of me shift in real time. I wasn't just Graham, the cookie baker. I was a veteran. I was a provider. I was a woman of quiet strength who had fought a war on 2 fronts, one for my country and one for my family's survival. That evening, the atmosphere in the house was transformed. We sat around the kitchen table, the January wind still howling outside, but this time, the family wasn't talking over me. They were listening. I told them about the freezing mornings in the motor pool and the loneliness of being one of the few women in a man's world during the Cold War. Why keep it a secret for so long? Leo asked, his phone finally forgotten on the counter. Because, I said, I wanted you to grow up in a world where you didn't have to worry about the sacrifices I made. I wanted you to have a normal mother. But I realize now that by hiding my past, I was hiding my true self from you. As we began to pack the chest back up, I felt a sense of emotional closure I hadn't known I needed. But as I lifted the uniform to settle it back into its tissue paper, a small, handwritten envelope fell out from the bottom of the trunk. It was yellowed with age, postmarked from a military base in West Germany, 1985. I froze. My thumb brushed the seal. I hadn't looked at this letter in 30 years. It was the one part of my service, 1 month in the winter of '85, that I had buried deeper than the rest. Mom? What's that? David asked, noticing my sudden stillness. I looked at the letter, then at the black sedan that had just pulled into the end of our snowy driveway, its headlights cutting through the dark. In a small town like this, nobody stops at the end of a long driveway at 9:00 p.m. in a blizzard unless they are looking for someone. The story isn't quite finished, I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. There's one more reason I stayed quiet, and I think that reason just found us. I stood up, my back straight, the sergeant returning to her post. Sarah, put the kettle on. Leo, move away from the window. We're about to have a visitor from my consulting days. The family stared at the door as a heavy knock echoed through the house, leaving them, and me, wondering if the past ever truly stays buried in the snow. If you enjoyed this grandma story, please like, subscribe, and stay with our family.